don't want to take any time getting introduced, so I'll just introduce myself. I'm Boyd Tuttle, and I am the president of Digital Legend Press and Publishing, which has also become known as the official publisher of the Heartland Library, which is kind of an honor that's come to me by accident, and it's one that I'm grateful to have. So if you've read the books about the Heartland, it's very likely that you've read books that I published, and so I appreciate that very much. And I wonder if this is focused very well. So if anybody knows how to focus that, so I work with Rod, and I am the Executive Vice President of the Firm Foundation. And on behalf of the Firm Foundation, we are very grateful to have you join us for these events that we do every 6 months. Today's topic is one that I have teased a time or two in previous talks, if you've heard me before. At the end of my talk, I've thrown in this idea that there's this new millennial science that I've been privileged to be the editor, or one of the editors of, and therefore be exposed to it. And as one who's kind of been there and involved with it, I get really, really excited about it. And so I've shared little bits and snippets. Today is the first time I've been able to be kind of at liberty to go on at length, okay? And even though we only have an hour together, it's not near enough time, but that's fine, because there's a rule that says the mind can only absorb what the rear can endure, something like that. So we'll keep it short, but I think time will go quickly when you understand what we're talking about here. I call this the millennial science of the third great awakening, which on its face is a pretty outrageous statement to make. I mean, the third great awakening, what hasn't happened? We've had one great awakening back in the 1700s, and then another one in the 1850s. And both of them were tied to religious revivals, okay? The one that in the 1700s that sparked the kind of the unification of the 13 colonies, got them united and broken away from the England and the motherland there. And then the one that occurred that was going on at the time, Joseph Smith was looking for the truth. So what is an awakening? Awakening really is there's a kind of a broad sense that just sweeps the nation. It just sweeps the world. And it raises our elevation, it raises our vibration, if you will. Almost, it's like a time where we are ready for new truths, for new knowledge to be poured out. And an awakening, as I've been studying this a little bit in preparation, it's very clear to me that it is a very spiritual thing. Now, what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes is science, okay? I've got to move this over because it's in front of the screen too much here. Put this all together. So even though we're going to be talking about science, and I want you to know this is a scientific discussion that we're going to have, okay? Now, many people, when they hear science, their eyes glaze over and they're like, oh my goodness, I failed my physics class, I never want to take chemistry again, and I'm in biology, please. So that's kind of the way, the reaction you get a lot of times when people talk about science. It's something that you have to be a PhD to understand. It's very involved and complex. Well, today's discussion, I think, will kind of break through some of those false paradigms. But I want to start by introducing a talk that was given in October 2014 by Elder Newdorf. one of my all-time favorite speakers. He gave a talk that I consider to be a landmark, and I think it's one of the most important talks ever given on learning by faith. You understand that comes out of the Doctrine and Covenants? Learning by study and also by faith. Well, that's an important element of learning. You can't just learn by study. And no, I'm not going to read all this, but I just want to point out that this was in his talk, and he mentions a couple of things that are going to trigger your memories. You'll remember this talk. And I talked about this yesterday. I don't want to repeat too much. How many were yesterday, my talk yesterday? Okay, so I'm going to whip through this quickly. He emphasized how, that was about half of you that raised your hands, by the way, so I still want to be respectful of those that didn't hear yesterday. We are constantly being challenged. Our visions are constantly needing to expand and raise because truth is big, it's huge. We don't really have a handle or a corner on all knowledge. And we have to be willing to be humble enough to understand that. And that's what he's saying here. He's saying, as we learn more, we see more. And he gives an interesting analogy. He said, imagine if you could go back in time 100 years. And imagine what it would be like to greet your ancestors 100 years ago, which in my case would be my mother when she was a baby, or my grandmother when she was in her 20s, and to tell her about the things that we're doing in our world today with cell phones and satellites and communications and jet travel and space travel. She would just think I had lost my mind. And in fact, he says most people would ridicule, oppose, or perhaps even seek to silence or harm us. Isn't that crazy? But why? It's because they have not yet received the more complete light of truth. Now, brothers and sisters, I am going to introduce some new light and truth to you today. And I dare say you, in the most cases, have never heard this before. So you have to be prepared, right? President Elder Uhdorf was trying to prepare our hearts because we're going to get it from a fire hose. Be prepared to drink, okay? Joseph Smith lamented the difficulty in teaching the saints anything new. He said, whenever I try to teach them, I like this last, he says, when I try to get the minds of the saints prepared to receive things of God, we frequently see some of them, after suffering all that they have for the work of God, will fly to pieces like glass. As soon as anything comes that is contrary to their traditions, they cannot stand the fire at all. If you can't stand the fire, we're not going to increase our light and knowledge, our intelligence, which is, in other words, light and truth. Right after the Lord introduces what is light and truth, 2 verses later, and the wicked one cometh and taketh away light and truth. So who is the god of this world? Satan, okay? God of this world, okay? The worldly world. Right, so if he's the god of this world, who's he going to uphold? What's he going to champion? What's going to be in the media? What's going to be pushed as all the greatest, newest, and most amazing things? The false ideas. Why? Because he is the father of lies. Okay? So we got to just remember, like President Packer said, we are in enemy territory. Okay? We come to this world, well, it's a great place to be because in this mortality, we get to experience things that we never experienced before. Right? Like what it's like to be raised in enemy territory. So he's commanded us to bring up our children in light and truth. In order to do that, we have to know light and truth in order to teach them. Now, there's a fellow that was a contemporary of Joseph Smith named Arthur Schopenhauer. He was a German philosopher. He said that there are 3 stages through which all truth must pass. All truth. The bigger the truth, the more these are emphasized. First, it is ignored and ridiculed. second one is? Gladly received, right? Okay, it is violently opposed. And then what? Well, we've known this all along. Of course the world is round. Who would ever think otherwise? Of course the sun is at the center of our solar system. The earth is not the center of the solar system and therefore the universe, but the sun is, okay? Well, those have certainly not always been believed or taught, have they? And in fact, Copernicus, who established the heliocentric model of our solar system, was persecuted quite badly at the end of his life. He didn't want to even publish because he knew that the persecution he would face, and he did. Galileo, similarly, suffered for his views, which were right. So let's talk about this new millennial science, okay? What is it? Where did it come from? I'm trying to do a little FAQ, frequently asked questions. First of all, it is a book, okay? And that is a picture, that's an actual artist rendition of what the book will look like when it comes out next year in its printed form. It will be available before next year in an electronic format, but that's actually a book. It's almost 2,000 pages long. Now put that in perspective, folks. How long is the Bible? How many pages is the whole Bible? 1,458? It's called the Universal Model of Science. It consists of 32 chapters, an introduction. It covers the universe system, the earth system, and the living system. Did it miss anything? Any parts missing there? Think of any? I can't. This is the most ambitious scientific work, I believe, in history. It is not a religious book in any way. It's a science book. And some people say, well, is this like creationism, 101, 102? No, this is science, 101, 102. It's based on empirical and natural law-based science. It uses actual data to establish every point. It's not theory-based. Now that strikes a lot of people as unusual and odd because we have not had anything but theories for the last 100 years. Did you know that? There's a little close-up view of it. Unfortunately, the lighting in here, the screen, it's a little bit hard to make out detail there. It's a beautiful book, beautiful cover. As a publisher, I quite appreciate that. So this is the Universal Model FAQ. Now, for those of you that are not digitally savvy, that means frequently asked questions. And I do get lots of those, so I will try to answer them now. And hopefully at the end, there'll be a few minutes, I can take a few questions. Number one, when is it going to launch? And there's the answer, October 15th of this year. Which many people say, oh, we have to wait until October. And I say, that is fast. That is so exciting to see a date here. I've had this inside of me for 2 years, and had to, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Who is the author of this work? Okay, so I don't call him an author, I call him a chief architect. Because this is not just a book. I'm a publisher and I know books. And this is so much bigger and more grand and more comprehensive than anything I've ever encountered. And who is the chief architect? Well, that will be
Moroni.
Announced on 10/15/2016. Who will publish it? It will be published from its own independent platform. The whole thing about the universal model is that it will not be tied to or associated or affiliated with any organization, institution, university, society, period. It is independent of every creature. Now that's important for a lot of reasons. This is going to be a very controversial book. if it were, let's just say, Creation University, in, where are they located, Missouri or Texas? If we were to align with them, well, everybody who already has dismissed them will just dismiss this work. If we were to go to the University of Utah and align with them, they would say, wow, it's just those crazy Utahns, Mormons, whatever. BYU, same story. It will not be aligned with anything. It is its own entity. It must be taken on from its source. It cannot be dismissed because it's never existed before. So what's the format? Well, first, initially, it will come out as an e-book, electronic book. You can read it on your computer, okay? And it will later come out as the printed book that you saw there. There will be many videos, there will be multimedia, there will be a testing program, there will be assessments, there will be whole curriculums that will be developed, that will be developed for schools, from elementary through middle school, high school, college. The book itself is college-oriented. It's college-level material. But trust me, anyone of any age can understand the content of this book. How much will it cost? Okay, well, we haven't worked out all the details, but it's going to be incredibly affordable. Very low cost. The subscription fees, $20, $30. I mean, it's just ridiculous how low it will cost. The books are very expensive to produce. They'll be at least $100, but that's literally probably the print price, okay? But there's no intent to make the money from just selling the materials. The content will be valued, but it will go so wide and so far and so viral so fast that it will take care of its costs. So it will be very affordable. Like I said, printed editions will come out in 2017, and there will be a pocket edition, right? Most people don't want to, take a 2,000-page book on your vacation and read it on the beach. So there'll be a little 300-page pocket book that will summarize some of the key points from the book. And that will become a bestseller. It will follow, from my own corporate business past, I use this Deming model of technological adoption diffusion, which is to say, if anybody remembers, Edward Deming was a kind of a process scientist, engineer, who invented, equality, TQM, total quality management, right? He went to Ford and GM, all of the U.S. car manufacturers, said, hey, I got this amazing quality management program that'll help improve the quality of your vehicles. Well, he was received not. Because, look, we got it under control, Mr. Deming. We're all set, no thank you. And so he said, fine. And he went to Toyota. And he went to Japan, okay? Well, that was in the 1970s and 80s. What happened? We all know what happened, right? Big crisis in the American auto industry. Everybody was buying Japanese cars because of the total quality process introduced by Deming. Well, now all the American companies have adopted it, but they got it later. They had the chance and they missed it. So eventually it will release worldwide in many languages. Who will read it? Well, I say all of the truth seekers the world over. And many people have said, well, it's going to be hard to get past like the gatekeepers because we've got a lot of PhD scientists out there that have dedicated their lives and careers and done amazing things and published, and you're kind of going up against them. And who are you guys really to think you can do that? I mean, and the answer is, that is fine. We're not going to challenge them. We're not going to confront them head on. We're just going to go to the markets that need to be served, which is everybody. They would love to control that space with all their pseudo-theories, but when the truth is self-evident, it will go directly to the masses. And because of the internet now, don't have to go to the gatekeepers. Okay, let's see, I already did that. So, let's go right into it now and talk about what do you see when you open up this book. Okay? First thing you're going to come to are some concepts. And one of the concepts is the questions concept. Okay? And that means that fundamental answers come from fundamental questions. See, this is what we don't do in modern science today. We don't ask fundamental questions. Do you know how to ask fundamental questions? In the text, it's called FQs, okay? And there's dozens and dozens of them. And they're questions that you've just never really thought of, right? Let me give you one. How many science classes ever started with this question posed to the students? Class, today we're going to ask the question, why is the world round? That is a fundamental question. Everybody know? You know the answer? Never in our science classes do we talk about that fundamental question. Okay, so there's different... I didn't give you the answer. You're all wondering, what's the answer? We'll maybe get to it. Okay, so there's 4 different ways or attitudes when we're asking our questions, right? We can be critical, skeptical, partial, or objective. I would submit, in the UM, we submit that objectivity is the best way, the best approach to answer things, because then you're not bringing your own bias, your own preconceived notions into the discussion. You're setting those aside and saying, well, let me examine the content for its own merits. And that's why it leads to the objective principle, which is discovery is best achieved by objective questioning. I love this one, the hard question principle. What do you think the hard question principle is? Seems pretty obvious and self-evident. Everybody's looking at it like, why is this so hard? Because answers come from questions. And we should question everything with an open mind. I'll give you an example here. That is a puzzle. It's a little bit blurry here in your picture, but that's a puzzle. And on it says modern science. Okay? It's a good depiction of our today's modern science. The puzzle pieces are not bad parts. They're all good puzzle parts. But what is wrong? It's right. They're not fitted together properly. So it becomes very complicated. It's very hard to make out what this puzzle is trying to tell us. Can anyone guess what that picture is? Now there's an actual puzzle assembled properly, and it's a picture of nature with some stairway in it. But that's what the universal model looks like when you see it. It just makes sense. It's beautiful. It all fits together. And science is not just one thing. Science is not just genetics. It's not just anthropology. It's not just physics. It's all those things fitted together in perfect harmony. And so, part of the things we learn is to distinguish between knowledge and wisdom. That's a whole section. How to distinguish between knowledge and wisdom. It's fascinating. We learn to distinguish between understanding and comprehension. We rarely ever talk about these things in a scientific context. And this page that I'm showing you right now comes right out of the book. Truth is knowledge of what is, was, and will be. This is a science book. So what is the test of truth? Test of truth? What is it? You better guess, what's the test of truth?
intelligence.
True intelligence. What test true? By evidence? I'm missing part of what you're saying. Proving it by evidence? Okay. Well, I'm going to give the answer here. Those are good thoughts. Here's a little clue, and there's the answer. The test of truth is time, isn't it? If you say this is thus and thus, well, that isn't that case the next day or a year later, well, then it wasn't true. But if it ever is that, it's true. So what is the purpose of the universal model of science? And it's stated very clearly here. Is there an agenda? Yes, there's a very clear agenda. Everybody has an agenda. Sometimes it's not stated up front. But in the universal model, it is stated clearly, and it's to restore truth and order in science by identifying new natural laws. Whoa. I thought all the laws have been discovered, right? I mean, there aren't any laws left. I mean, they're working on them, right? We got the theory of relativity, we got the theory of the string theory, we've got the quark theory, got quantum physics theory. Aren't those like where we're trying to get to? All right, so there are some pretty extraordinary claims being made by this universal model book. Well, if you make an extraordinary claim, you have to have a pretty significant demonstration to prove that claim. Now, this is just a really broad view of what's all included in the universal model. Okay? I'm just showing you there's lots of 32 chapters altogether covering the living systems, the earth systems, and the universe. Isn't that crazy how much that involves? In it, one of the first things that is handled is this universal scientific method. Now, we all learned in probably junior high or high school about the scientific method, right? So we all know the answer. Well, none of us realized that the school we were being taught at, what we learned, wasn't the same thing that the school next door was teaching. Did you know that? Every textbook teaches a different scientific method. There are dozens of different scientific methods. But this one is being applied universally across all of the sciences. And it's interesting to note that of these 6 steps, the last one is natural law. The objective is to find the natural law, not a new theory. And so one of the first things that is exposed in the UM text is pseudo-theories. Okay? So what is a pseudo-theory? Do we have any of these going on today?
No.
Oh, lots of heads nodding up and down. Okay, I'm not saying this, but I'm just saying what you're telling me. Evolution, what else? Global warming, what am I hearing? Any others? Those are 2 big ones. We're going to talk about a few more right now. False theories taught as fact. Now, Vince, are you back there? Vince Newmeyer. Vince is in this battle, which you all need to be supporting. Vince Newmeyer is, I'm not sure exactly how to describe what you do, but he lobbies the legislature up here in Salt Lake to try to get our education system to not lock in these pseudo-theories as the only allowable theories that can be taught in schools. Did you know that? That is legislatively defined, that you cannot teach outside of the evolutionary theory. You teach something that's like that, you can be punished as a teacher. Okay? Now he's lobbying to make that not a crime, right? Or make sure it doesn't become that kind of law. What? Now this is ridiculous, because look at this. We are in probably the most technologically advanced, well, no question, most technologically advanced time period on the face of the history of humankind. How could we possibly be in a dark age? Well, lo and behold, the third chapter of this book is called The Dark Age of Science. But there's a picture of Einstein on there. That doesn't make sense, because that had to be back in the 1300s, right? Maybe not. Now, you can't read this, and I don't expect you to, but what it does, what it shows, is the history of science starting with 500 BC. Archimedes, okay? Archimedes identified some early laws of science, right? And then, as we go along, you have the observations, the technologies, the theories, and then the laws over in this category on the far right. So each time that a theory is proven over and over and over, repeatable, demonstrable, and mathematically reproducible, it ends up in this category called new laws. Okay? And so those are coming along. Every 100 years or so, there's a new one introduced. Well, let's take a look at just the, it got cut off. Just the last first column up there is 1800s to today, all right? Look at this. We've got lots of theories and technologies and observations, but not one new natural law in over 100 years has been defined. Now, how is this possible? Because wouldn't you say, are there more scientists today than there were 100 years ago? Absolutely. Are we spending more money now? Of course. Do we have more advanced technology? We certainly have the means to find more information. Then why is there less natural law discovered today than 100 years ago? I'm getting some answers out there. Managed knowledge. Not politically correct. Wow. Where are the crowds at the science book signings? Did you ever have that down at Barnes & Noble? The newest science book? Anybody been to that book signing lately? What was the last book you read about an important new scientific discovery? Technology discoveries, oh yeah, all the time, popular mechanics. But what about science? You see, technology puts a man on the moon. But science can answer why there are craters on the moon. We still don't know. When I say we, I mean modern science as we have it today. So there's a big difference. Science is looking at nature as it's presented to us. Technology is the application of the observations that are made working with the materials in our grasp. Technology is responsible for some amazing important tools that aid in finding new scientific discoveries. But technology and science are not the same. A computer will never explain where craters on the moon came from. The correct explanation of the origin of the moon's craters comes only when human beings are engaged in the pursuit of true science. Here's a question. Is science linear? You know what I'm saying? Linear. In other words, we go from A to B to C. We kind of progress in our knowledge as we go along. Is this the way science looks over time? Discoveries and time. Actually, it's not. This is what true science grows in these steps. And preceding each step is a crisis, okay? And then a revolution. We had the Copernican revolution. People were persecuted, jailed, imprisoned, killed during that revolution. The Newtonian revolution. chemical. Each time you have power structures, institutions that are challenged, that topple. So the unique claim, and I dare say this is not claimed anywhere else that I have ever seen, is that modern science has been in a crisis for so long, over 100 years, that all of the fields of science are ready for a universal revolution. That is why I stand here and make the outrageous claim that this book, upon its release, will begin to usher in the third great awakening. Many people say, well, wait a minute. This is just some guy's ideas. You can't just launch a universal change in human paradigm with a book. And to that, the answer I would submit, which this is a page out of the book, is the truth is independent of its origin. Think about that. In other words, really does it matter? If I were to tell you that the author/architect had 5 PhDs, would you be impressed? If I told you that he was a high school graduate and never got beyond that, would you dismiss it? What qualifications, what credentials did Joseph Smith have to usher in the Restoration? See, I mean, looking at it through the lens of man's view is the wrong way to go. Truth is independent of its origin. Okay, I need a timekeeper. Will you be my timekeeper? Tell me what time it is. 20 minutes? Okay. Tell me when I got 10 and then 5. All right, so pseudosciences and pseudo-theories are the first third of the book. In other words, how do you teach truth? Well, first you have to unteach the wrong things, right? It's kind of like in the New Testament when the Savior said, can you put fresh wine in old bags? Right? No, the bottles, he called them bottles, but they were actually skins, right? If you put fresh wine into a skin, it would tear the skin. So you've got to undo the old stuff. Now, I'm sorry to say this because there's a lot of ensconced learning, institutionalized learning represented in just this room that has to be unlearned. Okay? That was the first casualty of being exposed to the universal model. I had to unlearn years and years of stuff that I thought I knew. Okay? But you know what? It was the most liberating, most exciting, most thrilling thing I have done to this point in my life. It's exciting to put down the shackles and chains and actually reach up to things that make sense. Okay. So for example, chapter 15, now I've just jumped a lot of chapters, haven't I? Talks about a pseudo-theory, and it's called the magma pseudo-theory. What is magma? You know what magma is? Russ?
Liquid rock.
Liquid rock. Hey, now, let's talk about liquid rock. Does that even exist? Is there such thing as liquid rock? What is it called? Lava. Right. Liquid rock is lava, right? And so, therefore, magma is obviously what fills the inside of the earth because occasionally it squirts out. Guess what? Not so. Magma has never been observed. Only lava. Okay? So that's a pseudo-theory. Okay? But once you understand that the earth is not super hot inside, and it's not filled with molten rock, then you begin to understand how lava really is created and formed, okay? Interestingly, lava does not come from below the Earth's crust. It, in fact, comes from movement of the tectonic plates against each other. Think about that. You hold your hands together really tight and scrub them back and forth a little bit. You do that very long, guess what? You're going to produce lava. Okay? They get hot, don't they? Well, think about that. But people are saying, well, wait a minute. How is that possible? In the UM, you learn about how that's possible because every day those tectonic plates are sliding past each other, okay? Creating the ring of fire. We can see this in our solar system, and we can learn from our solar system about our own planet. We know a lot about the planets around our solar system, but we rarely bring that back and apply it to Earth. The universal model brings it right back and says, well, if that mechanism's happening in Io, oh my goodness, it's the exact thing happening on Earth. Io just happens to be the most volcanic planet in the solar system. Did you know that? Most volcanic. It has 12 other planets around it. They're pulling gravitational. I'm giving you little insights here, little clues. You gotta understand, I'm under copyright restriction. I cannot reveal 1/10 of how much I want to. Okay. What is the most abundant mineral on the face of the planet? Anyone want to guess that one? Silica is the guess over here. Russ agrees. Anybody? It's wrong, by the way. Anybody? Nitrogen? No, I'm talking a mineral. Mineral? Okay. Carbon? Nope. Somebody said salt. That is correct. Salt. The salt mystery. Actually, this is in the rock cycle chapter. Did you know that if you took all the salt from just the oceans and spread it equally on the Earth, it would be 500 feet deep. A 40-story building would be covered with salt. Where does all that salt come from? That question, by the way, is answered in that chapter. Now here's another little question. You can tell I'm skipping about 70 to 100 pages at a time here. You ever seen the Grand Canyon? Who's been to the Grand Canyon? Is that the most spectacular view, standing there on that south rim looking across? You see all those layers and the sediments, that are shown in that geological record? Well, if that's a geological record, we're told that goes back millions and millions of years, right? And each layer is a year or two or a couple of centuries or whatever. Well, if that's true, answer this question. How could all these layers of sediment been laid down over millions of years and have no organic matter between the layers? See, that's a fundamental question, taken from observation. The answer is because it didn't take millions of years for those layers to be laid down. It happened very, very quickly. I love this slide. This comes from the book as well. Isn't that classic? Nature is too beautiful not to understand. Do you remember when we were reading section 93 of the Doctrine and Covenants? This is intelligence, or in other words, light and truth. The very next verse. And the wicked one cometh and taketh away light and truth. He doesn't want us to understand nature. Because why? Why does he not want us to understand nature? We're all Latter-day Saints here. Because it's a witness of Christ. All things testify that there is a God. Can you see how he's advantaged by confusing us about these things? Do you remember I talked about an agenda? Well, the universal model clearly has an agenda, and I spoke it. Well, other scientific theories also have agendas that are not so clearly identified. Charles Darwin was not originally an atheist, but he was by the end of his life, and he was a miserable man. But he believed that his theory could could take God out of the picture. Interesting that the God of this world has championed that thought. Okay, so now we're in chapter 17. There's a lot of information on that page right there. Here's a guy who wrote an article in Nature. Okay, this is a publicly available, modern science. A lot of great scientists out there. Please do not misunderstand me, folks. I am not dismissing or denigrating our wonderful scientists out there. If you're a scientist, a PhD, a scholar, I am not saying anything denigrating about that. I'm simply saying that without the structure, all of this knowledge, all of this information, all of this wonderful research, it's not fitting in anywhere. It's like that puzzle that we showed. So there's great research going on. And listen to this. The history of how Earth's interior evolved and how it accounts for many aspects of our planet's behavior remains largely unwritten. Taking water into account could well help to explain a great deal more. Now, for a modern scientist to say that, that's a big admission, right? Because he's supposed to say it's filled with magma. That's the storyline. Remember we asked this question early on? Why is the world round? It's because in space, liquid is spherical. Now here's a tradition that as human beings, citizens of this world, we've mostly not understood. But Moses had it right 4,000 years ago when he said, quoting our Creator, in the beginning, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. What's another word for deep in Hebrew? Water. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. You're starting to see a picture here? Waters, and then dry land, and waters and seas. Boy, you mean that's not just allegorical? I mean, literally? I thought it was like this molten mass, and then the telephone is ringing. Well, that's what we've been taught, but not in Genesis. It says water, 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 dry land, sea. So we have this amazing telescope called the Hubble, which can take pictures into deep space. And so it took one. And they have this thing called a maser, which is like a spectrogram. It can look at the visual spectrogram that comes back from an image, and they can spectroanalyze it to see what the elements and the materials that are being viewed in that brain image finder are in that maser. Well, look at this. Water in the Orion Nebula. Okay? This is a massive cloud. We're told, if you read a textbook, it says it's gas and dust. Gas and dust. Well, what kind of gas? Well, just gas and gas. Gas, lots of it. Gas made out of hydrogen and oxygen. About twice as much hydrogen as oxygen, but that's all. There's a lot of gas. A lot of gas. Wait a minute. Hydrogen 2 and oxygen 1 makes what? Water. Okay. So, what's this? This is from our researchers, not UN researchers, just regular old scientists, finding water on the sun. We will really get into that one in the UN. See, water everywhere. Saturn's rings are made of water ice, NASA. How about Mars? Can we live on Mars? A great movie that came out on that I want to see. Yes, you can live on Mars if you can provide if you can get there. Hydro is a rock with water in it. Wait a minute, if water, see we're told, what are we taught where rocks come from? Where do rocks come from? How are they made? We all took science, right? Geology. Remember your geology class in 8th grade? Lava squirts out and rocks are produced. Well, they're also, come up as, they come up out of the ground, right, somehow. And, well, then how do you explain this? Do you see that? These are crystals, rocks, like quartz, but there's water on the inside. You can see the little bubble floating around in there. How'd that happen? If it was a melt, super hot, okay? Okay, so that's where we get into the rock cycle chapter, which asks the question, how are rocks really formed? That is a big, big important question. One of those fundamental questions. How are rocks formed? I'll give you a little answer. Water. Keeps it being a common theme here. Matter of fact, take a look at this. According to our modern geology today, the oceans account for 95% of the water on Earth. If you look at the hydro planet, the oceans account for 1% of the water. Big difference. There's a whole discussion there we could get into. Chapter 18 gets into the universal flood. Now that's, of course, just mythological, allegorical. Didn't really happen. It's just kind of a neat faith-promoting story. Talk about Noah, some animals, an ark. Because, seriously, how can you have the whole world covered with water? Because, scientists will tell you there's not enough water in the oceans or the rains or the skies and clouds. They all came down at the same time. We could cover the earth about 2 inches. Right? Not going to cover all the mountains. We've been taught that. I was. Even at our very prestigious universities. It was probably just a regional flood. I've been taught that. How many have been taught that? Regional flood. How many of you believe that? I did for a while. Guess what? Genesis says it covered the whole earth. So which are we going to believe? The scholars or the prophets? This is where it really gets interesting, isn't it? And we teach our children to sing the song in primary. Follow the prophet, follow the prophet. Right? He knows the way. But in fact, we follow the scholar, follow the scholar. Right? Don't we? Admit it. Tell the truth. So, this is where the rubber hits the pavement, folks. Really, do we believe the scriptures? Or maybe not so much? Was our planet once inundated by a massive global flood? That's an awesome picture. It's frightening too if you weren't in the boat. That's a wall of water, by the way, coming down. It's not a mountain. What does the scripture, what does Genesis say? That it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And then what? The fountains of the deep were broken up. Uh-oh. There's that deep again. Deep. Water. Uh-oh, I got a hand up here.
Native American legend says that waters came up from the earth and from the mountains and poured out into the
Native American legend says that waters poured up from the inside of the earth and out of the mountains. Pay attention to those Indian legends. You know what they're talking about. So here's a whole chapter. By the way, this chapter alone, 400 pages. Yeah, and we don't just give we don't just give 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 examples for evidences of a universal flood. This chapter gives 500 evidences for the universal flood that covered the highest mountain. Which, by the way, answers 100 other questions. All right? For example, where do fossils come from? How are fossils made? What are we taught? What are we taught? Millions of years, right? Deposition, pressure, lays down, animal died, and then, it just took millions of years to get a fossil formed. Really? Okay, so when you buried your favorite hamster, 2 minutes, when you buried your favorite hamster, you think there's going to be a fossil of that in 100 years? No. It's long gone. The microbes ate it up really quick. Fossils happen very, very fast. Fossils happen when you have enough pressure and heat, water, and quartz in proximity. And guess what? Fossils are rocks. So I just gave you a clue on how rocks are made. Interesting little insight that comes out of the book here. A little insight into the authorship of the book. And this comes right out of the book. The author was standing on this sidewalk after he had had a meeting with a professor, in which the professor said to him, there will never be any scientific evidence for a universal flood. We credit that professor because it was thanks to that statement that this whole project got started. Isn't that amazing? How opposition produces amazing results. All right, so we're out of time. So I'm just going to wrap up here with just showing a couple of the slides. It goes into the evolution pseudo-theory. There's a whole chapter on that. After I got done reading that, I was embarrassed to think that I ever actually kind of maybe thought evolution could have been possible. Earth age model, fossils, all discussed in great detail. 35 new natural laws. It's never been seen in the history of mankind. The most we've ever seen was 3. Bruce R. McConkie said, these are questions to which all of us should find answers. Every person must choose for himself what he will believe. Heavenly Father loves us. He loves us and He wants to help us believe. He wants us to know the truth. So He's not making it hard. With this in our hand, with this as a tool, brothers and sisters, we are going to be able to believe in ways that are unbelievable. How's that? Now, if you want to break that mainstream chain of science, chain of darkness that we decided for ourselves, I may suggest 2 books that you can get here at this conference, written by one by Gary Wright called Standing the Test of Time. Gary is on to very many good points here. He had not been exposed to the universal model when he wrote this book, which is based on a talk given by Ezra Taft Benson. Okay, Standing the Test of Time. Speaking about the book, Man, His Origin and Destiny by Joseph Fielding Smith. And there's another book here that I don't publish, so I'm giving him a free plug here, by David Barker. He's got a booth back here called Science and Religion, Reconciling the Conflicts. He also is very much moving in this direction. So if you want to get a preview, a pre-taste, those are 2 books I'd recommend. Are you ready for the revolution? Are you prepared? Will you be a part of this great awakening? We are witnessing a marvelous work and a wonder. So what is your role? You've sat through this now for 55 minutes. Why? Let me just say, if you felt something that said, man, I really think I can do something to help this incredible project move forward. I have some connections, I have skills, I have funds, I have knowledge of how to disseminate amazing things to the public information world. Maybe I need to come and talk to Boyd and mention to him what I think I can do. That's your role. If you feel prompted to do that, please come talk to me. Otherwise, wait till October and wait for amazing miracles to come forth. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
We're still here.